Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Optimus NFL show. I'm your host, Brad Bolt, and thrilled to have you join us this week for a very special episode. It's Super Bowl week, and with me, as always, is my co-host and good mate, Dan O'Connell. Dan, how are we?
Brad, I'm doing good, mate. Excited we finally get to Super Bowl weekend. Obviously, the game's on Monday for us, so we have the build-up the entire weekend waiting for it. So excited for it. Always a good time of year, get into it, and, bring it on.
Yes, and if you are watching this on YouTube and you've noticed there is a third person here tonight for this episode with us, we've got a special treat here. This man here played 149 AFL games for the Adelaide Crows. Go Crows, that's my team. And the Geelong Cats. He was the Crows' leading goal kicker in 2018 and was named to the All-Australian squad of 40 in 2016. Also, in doing some of the research, I've noticed it's his birthday tomorrow. So happy birthday to our guest. It's Josh Jenkins. Josh, thanks for joining us and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, boys. Yeah, I've already been out for a little early birthday dinner. I've got to work tomorrow, so the girls are a bit disappointed, but we'll get the work out of the way so we can lock in on Monday. And I like to try and get up early and catch as much of the pre-game as possible, and then lock in for the big game.
So during the season, you're up from the crack of dawn watching these games to start with, or do you sort of just, whatever may come depending on the week?
No, for the most part, I'm certainly when the season starts, I think we're all pretty excited and we're all pumped up. So I don't even really need to set the alarm. The body just kind of wakes me up and something tells me that it's time to get up. So I get up. I probably like to get up 10 or 15 minutes after kickoff. I'm not as locked into fantasy football anymore, so I'm not sort of getting up, making sure my guys aren't injured or my guys aren't sick or whatever. So I like to get up 10 or 15 minutes after kickoff. Generally, one or two teams across the early window might have scored and the games are underway. So, generally I'm up and at 'em, that's for sure.
Yeah, where I was always up. Used to like to get up and watch the 10, 15 minutes beforehand to see some of the, the game conditions and that. But as the kids have come along, it's now, you know what? Sometimes we'll see what time we wake up and we'll see how much we miss. So we're here to talk about the biggest game of the season, Super Bowl, and we're going to go over a few things. Josh is going to be with us for about 25 to 30 minutes. So firstly, Josh, I just want to see, what's your overall thoughts on this game? Were you happy with the two teams that are there? Were you hoping for a different Super Bowl matchup at all? Like, what's your thoughts just overall on this before we dive into any of the rest of it?
Oh, look, I think whoever makes it deserves to be there. I'm a big believer in, you are what your record says you are. So, I'm a Bengals fan. So, all the chatter about, if we had made it, we would have done some damage. Well, at the end of the day, we didn't make it. So, you can say what you like. So, look, I feel like the AFC was a bit stronger this year. So I feel like what Kansas City have been able to do has been underrated. I think we've looked for their negatives and their shortcomings all year, yet all they've done is win. And what they basically lost one game on their merits, and they tanked in another game to rest their starters. So I love what they've done. They deserve to be there. You won't find me. I'm not fatigued by what Kansas City have done at all. I know there's a lot of chatter around about, the fatigue of the champs and the love from the refs and that sort of stuff. But I love Andy Reid. I love Mahomes. I love Steve Spagnuolo. I love their team. And I think the Eagles deserve to be there as well because, look, they're from top to bottom, they're a super talented roster. Saquon Barkley has just been unmissable this year. I've been, typically I wouldn't lock in on the Eagles unless they were a primetime game or a standalone game on ESPN or whatever. But having Saquon Barkley in the mix, they've just been a team that you haven't wanted to miss. So, look, I would have loved to have seen Detroit make a run at it. But as I said at the start, the teams that make it deserve to be there. So no complaints from me.
Now, Dan, what are you thinking? What are your overall thoughts on this game?
Well, that's it. Like Josh said, the Chiefs, you didn't think much of them during the season just because they weren't blowing teams away. they were in a lot of close games, and it wasn't the old sort of the dominant Chiefs that we're used to from a couple of years back. Even last year, they were more dominant than what they were this year. But like Josh said, they just win. And they're just that team overall. They were so well coached. Patrick Mahomes, obviously one of the best quarterbacks to ever do it. They're just near on impossible to beat. And you've got to play pretty much perfect to be in the game at the end. So, yeah, they just went about their business all year, saved themselves almost for the playoffs, for the big moments as well, it seemed. We see Travis Kelce, obviously, starting to take a step back during the regular season now and then explodes come the playoffs. So it's always hard to match up against the Chiefs in those big games. They're just too good at the moment for a lot of other teams. And, yeah, for Philly, I think they've got the best roster overall in the entire NFL. So it's not a surprise that they're there. Jalen Hurts is a winner. He's just cool under pressure. Adding Saquon Barkley was a damn cheat code for them behind that offensive line. So I think this could be one of the best matchups for Super Bowls for a long time, to be honest.
So, in saying that, Josh, are you expecting this game to be a shootout, or is this going to be one of those defensive masterclasses which ends in the 13 to 10 sort of range?
No, I think both teams will be able to score. Listen to countless podcasts and read countless articles and this, that, and the other on trends and where each team ranks. And I think Kansas City have been pretty average down in the red zone this year. They've been one of the lower teams in terms of their efficiency in the red zone, but I think they'll get down there. Look, I do see so much resemblance in the Patriots when they weren't necessarily one of the better teams at the start of the year, but they just found a way. They just continue to win. They continue to win by a field goal on the buzzer, or they continue to score that late touchdown via Mahomes. So I think both teams will be able to move the ball and score the ball, but because of the way they play, like we know the Eagles are going to run the ball. Well, if the Eagles have the ideal game script for them, like Barkley's going to run the ball 25 times. Jalen Hurts is probably going to carry the ball 8 to 12 times. You might get 3 or 4 carries from the backups. So that starts to eat into the clock big time. And we know that Mahomes can have those drives, even when he's passing the ball. They're almost able, like Brady used to do, they're almost able to basically have a run game using the passes through the inside or across the middle where the players stay in bounds, they go down, there's no risk involved. They're picking up 4 to 6 yards each time. And I think it might be a lower scoring Super Bowl because of the way the two teams play. But in terms of, I don't think it'll be because defenses are dominating. I think both teams just play a game style that just tends to eat up a lot of clock.
That's what I was going to say. Both these teams, I think they're 1 and 2 in the league as far as 10-plus play drives. So I don't think it's going to be the high-scoring game that we could have expected between these two. But like you said, I don't think it's going to be purely because of a defensive standing between the two teams. I think it's just the time taken off the clock with each possession for both of them, I think limits the point scoring that we're going to get come the end of the game.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the week off is a big factor in favour of Kansas City. I think for the most part, both teams seem healthy. Well, I can't really recall too many big, journalists over there talking about guys who've been banged up. Mahomes was banged up in the playoffs last year and the year before. Jalen Hurts was banged up supposedly last year. Whereas I don't think we've really heard too much about that. I know there's a bit of a whisper at the moment about the Eagles and some illness, but I don't know whether that's rumor and chit chat. But for the most part, both teams are healthy, and I think the week off helps the Chiefs more so. I think it helps Travis Kelce big time. You only got to go back a few weeks to they had that, effectively 2 weeks off, but he had the bye week to sort of feel good about himself. So they get a week to feel good about themselves and recover, plus the extra week's preparation. So if you were looking to work out which team would be benefited the most by the week off, I certainly think the Chiefs. And we know that, I think there was a stat getting around, Andy Reid with 13 or more days to prepare. His numbers are absolutely off the charts in terms of
Mhm.
wins. So I think the extra week's prep is certainly no harm for the Chiefs.
So, in saying that, what is your matchup? And Dan, I'll come to you after Josh. But what is your key matchup that you're looking into this game? Because I think there's probably about 5 or 6 key matchups that really could determine the outcome of this game. So, what would be your number one matchup that you're looking at there?
Oh, I'm interested to see whether Mahomes can find a reliable target on the outside. Like, I think for the most part, everything else will be what we expect. I expect Barkley to be able to run the ball. I expect the Eagles' offensive line to be fairly dominant. I expect the Chiefs' defense to make a few plays thanks to the wizardry of Steve Spagnuolo. Um, but I just, you look at the names and you go through the roster and you see, DeAndre Hopkins and you see Juju Smith-Schuster and you see Xavier Worthy, but who's going to be the reliable one throughout the game? And I feel like it's going to need to be someone who gets in a rhythm. I feel like it might be Worthy. They might throw the ball to him, via a couple of screen passes early in the game. And I reckon just to get him involved in the game so that when they need to try and take a shot, because I think if Kansas City are unable to take the top off the defense, and that sounds silly because you've got Patrick Mahomes, but they haven't played that way. So if they can't get some chunk yards through Worthy or through Hopkins or Juju that like we've seen throughout the early part of the playoffs, then I think they'll be in some strife. So I think that's the most interesting part. Which receiver can stand up, other than Kelsey and other than the running backs, which receiver can stand up and be a downfield threat?
I like that. I like that shout out with Xavier Worthy as well. So I was talking probably 2-3 days ago with Danny Heifetz from The Ringer. He's a friend of the show. He's been on a couple of times, and he's looking like he's going to come back on after this. And he was saying that the Chiefs do 2 really good things with Xavier Worthy, and they use him. They know his speed, so they try and throw some of those screens early and set it up like a 40-yard dash, get the ball in his hands and see who can catch him. But the other one is they do run him a lot on those jet sweeps to set up that motion for later in the game when they're expecting that Xavier Worthy handoff from a Patrick Mahomes, and that's when you might find like a DeAndre Hopkins or a Juju open later on down the field. So I really like that call for Worthy. Dan, what are you looking at?
For me, it's the same like we saw with Tom Brady. When you pressure him up the middle, then it throws him off his game completely. I think it's the same with Mahomes, even though he's more capable sort of off rhythm. You need to just get him off his spots and put him under pressure constantly. So I'm looking forward to seeing Jalen Carter just cause absolute havoc up the middle of that offensive line for the Chiefs. I think he could look at a 2+ sack game this week. And if he does that, then you've got Quinyon Mitchell, you've got Cooper DeJean, you've got that back end of the Chiefs there where they're going to be able to put pressure on the receivers as well. So Jalen Carter, outside of sort of Saquon Barkley, who's the obvious one, but I think Jalen Carter holds the biggest key for me in this game, to be honest.
Yeah, just also had a look. His Super Bowl MVP odds are 91-1 there. If you want to chuck a dollar on that as well, Dan, if that's what you're liking. So, what else, Josh? Are you sort of, because Dan and I were briefly speaking about this beforehand. Do you think that Vic Fangio might throw a different look at the Chiefs in this game, because he was the sort of the father of this defense, the way that you play that 2 high shell, and you try and make sure that those plays over the top don't happen. So everything becomes a dink and dunk sort of offense. But the Chiefs are probably the best dink and dunk offense in the NFL. So does Vic Fangio, switch it up and go, hey, we're going to play a bit more blitz pressure or a bit more man coverage and dare Mahomes to try and beat them deep? Or do you reckon that he's going to try and just stick with what got them there and go from there?
Well, I mean, you can only implement a game plan that your players are capable of executing, right? So I think for the most part, they'll have to stick to what's made them the number 1 overall defense. the problem is, I think and I probably should have had a look. I think Fangio's numbers in terms of head-to-head against Mahomes, I think it is really ugly. I think Mahomes has absolutely had his number. Now, I know that's not the actual matchup, the quarterback versus the defensive coordinator, but it goes a fair way to the outcome of the game. So I don't know what they can do different. I think they probably just need to rely on, the point about some pressure up the middle through, with Jalen Carter, and he made some big plays, didn't he, to keep them from being upset. It was either I think it was against the Rams, where the Rams were driving to potentially steal that playoff match, and Jalen Carter was the one who made that big play and basically sealed the deal for the Eagles. So I don't know that they'll do anything different, but they'll certainly want to be able to adjust on the fly, because Mahomes is interesting. I was listening to a podcast over in the States where they talked about, it was really good stuff. They were talking about the fact that the Eagles typically never play a spy. So Mahomes in the playoffs almost deserves a spy, because he just becomes this quarterback who really looks to run and he's more than happy to tuck the ball. And I think he carried the ball 11 times last week. So he relies on his legs a little bit more in the playoffs, and he's a really good runner. I think we just see the arm talent, and we see the play, the throws to Mahomes and Worthy and these guys, and we forget how good he is with his legs. So that's a factor as well. And the other interesting part was the Chiefs have been really prone to playing with two tight ends, which is really not what the Eagles want to have to come up against, because then they've got to put DeJean on the bench really in that type of a situation. So that part of it is going to be fascinating. Who blinks first? Do the Eagles blink and put one of their stars on the bench because the Chiefs are playing with two tight ends, or do the Chiefs change it up and only play one tight end? That's the stuff that's really minutiae, and you probably don't even realise it when the game's in play. It's when you go back and watch it and you start to realise why one team was able to get on top of the other.
Yeah, and
That's
just
the best
having a
thing
quick
about-
look too. Sorry,
You
just
go,
having
bro.
a quick look too. 0-8 Vic Fangio is all time against
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes as head
I
coach
knew
and
it wasn't good.
coordinator. Yeah.
Each loss, you're closer to your next win, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying, Dave?
I don't actually know. I've lost my train of thought on that now. So it wasn't that
That's
important anyway, but it's all right.
So the other question that I was thinking of too is, so the defense that everyone's going to remember the last time that these two teams played, the James Bradbury hold on Juju, which ended the game, and they've obviously gone and upgraded the corners with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. But do you have, like, you've played obviously in big games in AFL, is it when it's your first, and you've obviously played in that grand final with the Crows, and but in your first grand final, as much as you try and keep everything the same as always, is there, for a first timer, is there always something that really does, like, you take that little bit of a beat to catch up to the speed of the game, or something you would normally do 9 times out of 10, this is the one time when it doesn't happen because the moment sort of doesn't get to you, but it plays on your mind that little bit?
Well, I think we've seen the unforced errors. You've only got to go back to the rematch or the first time these two teams played. Remember, Jalen Hurts just put the ball on the ground, no pressure. The Chiefs, were able to pick it up and score a touchdown. So it's almost the unforced errors. I believe that the numbers, the stats around the defensive touchdowns in Super Bowls are off the charts as well, and a lot of it is, I guess when you get behind, you start to have to force it, and you're thinking, well, there's no tomorrow. There's no point, losing by 10 or losing by 13. We might as well try and win it. So you see some pick sixes, but what you see in some of the Super Bowls, and I think it's basically been one in every 2 Super Bowls, there's been a defensive touchdown, and that's, I think, for the most part, the unforced errors come from players feeling the pinch and players feeling the pressure, and maybe even players feeling like they need to do more than they really need to in that moment. Like that's why I think the experience is so important. But the Chiefs are the most experienced. But look, the Eagles have got 75-80% of that roster who played 2 years ago as well. So I guess Saquon Barkley's the main one who hasn't been to a Super Bowl, but I can't imagine it's going to be too much or too big of a stage for him. So I think both teams will handle it really well. They talk about 10 minutes for halftime versus 30 minutes. That's a big difference, and that takes a bit of getting used to. But again, they've all been through it, so I don't expect the game or the situation will be too much for any of the guys. Back to Mahomes and some of the stats around him. He's 8-0 against Fangio. I think he's 13-0 or 16-0 in domes as well. So he's pretty good indoors.
He's just
pretty
good no
good.
matter
He just
where
doesn't
he is.
lose.
It's just impossible to get the best of him sometimes. But yeah, I was going to ask, I think Brad sort of had the same idea as me. But like you said, you played in that grand final. You were kind of a focal point as well of that team. Do you think being that sort of player, does that affect you more in the lead up to a game sort of this magnitude than it does normally? Or does it kind of just, you go about it the same way as much as you can, as best as you can?
Yeah, I think you try and just status quo in terms of just because it's a big game. Your role doesn't really change in terms of like in an ideal world, you still basically just do what you've done to get you to that point. It's not like, just because it's a grand final or a Super Bowl, now instead of being a receiver that has 50 yards and a touchdown or 50 yards and is responsible for 3 first downs, all of a sudden we need you to double it. It's more so, look, do what you always do, and if everyone else does the same, then we'll be in a good position. So I think that the key part will be, guys like AJ Brown. If AJ Brown's not involved in the game, what happens there? And look, the Chiefs don't really have too many players like that. I know we've seen Kelsey, back in the day, lose his way and lose his mind, but for the most part, I think the Chiefs are really tried and tested. You don't really ever see their defense blowing up and going off at each other. You don't really see any, in sort of internal struggles between the offense and the defense, or any of the receivers really getting upset. Whereas, we know that we've seen some stuff from AJ Brown. So if in a big moment, because the one thing that is true is, even though you only need to do your job, you do want to be the one who has a massive game and wins the Norm Smith or wins the Super Bowl MVP, because you've got that forever. But when that doesn't happen for you, you need to be able to keep calm and stay in the moment. And that's going to be fascinating with guys like AJ Brown. Look, Jalen Carter as well. They're going to have a plan for him, the Chiefs. I think they'll have a plan to try and wear him out, try and throw the ball near him, but not right toward him, so that he's getting frustrated, because he is a guy that can make some bonehead plays from time to time. He can be responsible for the odd personal foul or unsportsmanlike conduct and stuff. And the Chiefs are the masters at that. So a lot of the stuff around the referees, I just think they're better at working the refs. They're better at, like, Mahomes is just better at than the other quarterbacks at flopping. He flops, no doubt about it, but he just does it better than the others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And as a fan, it's painful to watch, but the defenders just have to be better and know what's going to happen. And it's just one of those things. You get that white line fever, I assume, and you just want to go at him and make the big hits and that sort of thing. But yeah, especially in games like this, you just got to be smarter about it. Is it the kind of thing where a lot of that nervous energy sort of in the build up to it, especially for a Super Bowl, I'd have to imagine, just with the amount that goes into the build up, even the entire week, it's insane. Coming out, would you think it's easy to start off flat if you sort of build too much up, even in the first sort of or last hour before the game? And that affects too many teams as well when they get there, as far as they've played the game a lot before they even get on the field.
Yeah,
I think that's where the Chiefs have the advantage as well.
Yeah, I think it's one way or the other, isn't it? Like you can play the game in your head before the game, and even like I wouldn't really. I don't think I'd enjoy the 2 week lead up to an AFL Grand Final. I think 2 weeks would be that first week. Before the teams travel, that first week back in Philly and Kansas City, I reckon would be a really long week because
Yeah.
you're
Mm.
probably expected to practice pretty hard. You're probably going to have 1 to 2 practices that are really hard in terms of, certainly in an AFL world, we've got 2 weeks off, or a week off where we've got no game. We're basically going to go full speed, like game like for at least an hour or so, on the weekend off. So if the NFL teams have had to do that's sort of hard to get your head around because you're asked to go hard, but no one wants to hurt each other. No one wants to get hurt. No one wants to miss a Super Bowl or a grand final because of something you've done at practice. So yeah, I'm glad we don't have the 2 weeks, but you are spot on. I reckon the mistake players will make is you either play it out in your head too much and you've got no energy for the actual game, or you come out with your hair on fire and you try and do too much too quickly, and that's when you start to see unforced errors. You start to see, some penalties and those sorts of things. Like it's, defensive players jumping off sides because they're trying to get to the quarterback, that sort of stuff, instead of waiting for the snap and those sorts of real basics. And it's a build. Like I'm not really a Patriots fan at all, but you've got to respect what they did for a long time. And one of the things Belichick and Brady always talk about is, you can't go and win big games until you stop beating yourself. And that's the thing we don't see the Chiefs do. We don't see the Chiefs beat themselves. And look, Philly are pretty good in that space, maybe because of how close this game should be.
Oh, we lost him.
Think we've just lost Josh. There we go. Just froze for a quick second. Okay, last couple questions before we get you out of here. It was obviously announced yesterday that in 2026 we are going to be having an NFL game here in Melbourne. There's just obviously working through the logistics of how that's going to work in terms of when the AFL finals and everything on. What are your thoughts on having a regular season game here in Australia, and how much do you reckon that's going to improve the fan base in that time?
Look, the NFL is just growing and growing. It's been so cool to look. I got involved in the game heavily, probably around 2010, and even to see it grow from that period of time, and even in one of my roles with Sportsbet, you can watch every game live on the Sportsbet app now, and you can. I was saying to my wife, you get about 8 games a week on ESPN and on Seven, so you can basically get a lot of football these days. I remember when I was a kid, you'd get the Super Bowl on SBS, and I'd be sort of looking at this sport thinking, "What is this?"
Yeah.
So it's come a long way. I mean, all the content we get on our phones and stuff is amazing. So it's very cool. I'm surprised we've been able to secure a regular season game. I thought we might have ended up with a preseason game or something like that, but to see the teams, or the teams in terms of the Rams anyway, come down will be so cool. I am surprised that it ended up in Melbourne. I'm not sure how it's going to look on a round stadium.
Yeah.
I thought Sydney might have been in the box seat to get it just because of the rectangular stadium. But look, I'll be trying to get a ticket for sure. So hopefully they send out my Bengals or someone like that. So I had to go all the way to Dallas to watch them. So it'd be nice if Burrow and Chase and those boys could come out here. But look, it'll be awesome for NFL fans, because we've had to do it tough for a long time, haven't we? We've got to get up at 3 or 4 in the morning, and look, we've got great content now, but for a long time it was hard to get a lot of good stuff. So we're starting to reap the rewards, and hopefully it's the first of a game every year from here on out.
So that means that if you happen to get a ticket and we have a ticket, we're all able to catch up for a beer?
Yeah, for sure. I'm just hopeful that I can get a ticket first and foremost, because that is probably one of the benefits of of the MCG, 100,000 seats plus. I'd
Yeah.
imagine they'll probably put some on the grass. So let's just cross our fingers that we can all get tickets and they send a good team as well. Hopefully, I know I was thinking about it yesterday. They send the Jags and those sort of teams to London. So hopefully they don't send the Jags or the Titans to Australia and we get an all LA game would make sense, wouldn't it? The
That's what I'm
Chargers and the
thinking, yeah.
Rams. So
Yeah, I think
and
that's logistically what I'm thinking is the easiest way to do it.
yeah, and I know I was having there was a sort of graphic on Instagram earlier because the schedule in terms of which divisions and stuff the Rams are going to play in 2026 is already out. So it's already been narrowed down to about 10 teams. I don't reckon, what do you guys reckon about? I don't think they'd play a divisional game in
No,
Melbourne because they won't want to give up
no.
that home field advantage.
No,
They would
I'm with you.
absolutely lose it over there if it's a divisional game being sent here.
Yeah, so that narrows it down. That puts the Chargers in play. Like Kansas City are on their slate in
Mm,
2026. So imagine if the Chiefs were able to come out here. But whoever it is, like I couldn't care who plays. I'll be there
Yeah,
if I can get a ticket. So
yeah.
it'll just be great to see. And I think the NFL will just continue to take off on the back of it.
100% agree. So, last questions before we get you out here. Who is your pick for the winner and the MVP in this game?
I'm going to go Kansas City 28-27. I'm not confident it'll be that high scoring, but we want it to be high scoring, don't we? We're not
Yeah.
we're not going to sit there and cheer for it to be 13-10. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I just you don't make money and you don't have a fun life betting against Patrick Mahomes, so I'm not going to do it. I didn't do it last year. The Niners had a better roster. The Niners had the guru of a head coach. They had the superstar running back, but the other team had Mahomes, and Mahomes was able to find a way to get it done. So I'm going to stick with Mahomes and the Chiefs, and hopefully it is an absolute thriller.
Yeah, that would be ideal. High scoring game, one of those ones that we had where the Commanders, when they won the other week, where it was, what was it, like 40-30 or like against the Lions or whatever, that would be fantastic. It'd be great.
Yeah.
But Josh, really have to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure for both Dan and myself to have you on. You're welcome back anytime you want. So if there's ever a time you've got some NFL thoughts on your mind that you wanted to get off, just give us a buzz and we're more than happy to have you on. So thank you very much for spending a little bit of time with us here.
No, I appreciate it. It's been good to talk a little bit of Super Bowl. Enjoy the game. Hopefully you boys aren't working. You can find a little bit of free time and consume the game. Hopefully if you've got to work, you've got a nice sick day up your sleeve or something. But no, it's been good fun.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks.
Appreciate
I've
you taking the time.
I've managed to get the day off. I've made sure of it. So yeah, we're good to go.
Perfect.
We are good to go. Perfect. Thanks very much for coming on, Josh.
Good work, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. See ya. Well, that was pretty cool, wasn't it?
Good guy.
Great guy. Yeah. Awesome to have Josh on there. As I mentioned, former AFL footballer. Played for my local team here in Adelaide for, I think he played 147 games for the Crows. So, really good to have him come on and give his thoughts there. Look, Dan and I we've sort of given our thoughts on what we are seeing, for this matchup. We spoke about that with Josh. A couple quick things that we can go over here. Currently, Kansas City are $1.83 favourites to Philly $2.02. Kansas City are -1.5 favourites, and the over/under is 48.5. So Josh's prediction there of 28-27 would carry the over there. Well, I think, Dan, what we can quickly do is we can both give out our touchdown scorer bets. You can go first. Give us a couple of your touchdown scorers that you're looking at.
All right, so you can go the easy ones like Saquon Barkley. I think Travis Kelce. I'm not expecting it to be his last game, but if that's on his mind, I think they'll be looking to get him a touchdown in the Super Bowl there. But if I'm going something, I'm going to look at Hollywood Brown at $3.80. I think with
Mhm.
Kelsey taking a lot of the looks from the defense, you got Xavier Worthy. They need to be all over him, watching him where he goes. Someone like Hollywood Brown can sort of leak out and get open. So $3.80, I think that's worth a shot. Like we said, I don't think we're expecting a lot of touchdowns in this game. So you're kind of hard pressed finding that value there without going the most obvious ones. But yeah, $3.80, I'll take that with Hollywood Brown.
So in the same sort of vein, my pick is a receiver as well. I've gone with Xavier Worthy at $2.60. But as you were speaking, two other names actually popped up while I was thinking there. The guys who might not have a huge impact stats wise, but they'll be there for that sort of touchdown ability because they're the ones who get forgotten about. And those two guys I'm thinking were Noah Gray and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, Nuke Hopkins has barely been cited for the Chiefs, but that is one of those things where, because of that, maybe then Philly are going on those three receiver sets and going, well, let's get Quinion on Xavier Worthy. Let's get Darius Slay on Hollywood Brown. And they sort of go, third corner, whether it be Cooper DeJean or, whoever they play in that, Vontae Maddox in that spot. That could be like a DeAndre Hopkins. He might only have, I think his over-under for catches is 1.5. So they're not expecting a lot from him. But he might only have one catch for 8 yards in this game, and it could be a touchdown. So they're, you said, same sort of thing. Guys who, in the grand scheme of things, aren't really looked at. But, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to see. And then, if you want to throw another one in that, it's Juju at $6.75. So,
yeah, my
pretty decent odds for those guys.
Noah Gray, I was on the same page as you there, and Juju was my guy as well. He's actually stepped up big time in the playoffs for this offense as well. He's starting to get targeted more, so wouldn't be surprised if he gets a touchdown, to be honest.
I've just seen one here who is the way outsider, and you mentioned it beforehand, the special teams touchdown. But it's for Kansas City, it's Nico Remigio. His the thought process of him taking a kickoff back for a touchdown. He's paying $41 for a touchdown. Like we said, it's been a while, obviously, since we've seen a kickoff or a punt return for a touchdown. It feels like in the Super Bowl, but that's a guy who, he doesn't touch the ball very often, but we've seen the last couple weeks when he's been playing, if he's given a chance, he's taking some of them back 50-odd yards and getting then tackled at the 35, the opposite 35 or something like that. So he would be like the rank outsider if you want to chuck $1 on, just as a bit of a, hit and hope sort of thing.
Bit of a fun one for Super Bowl game.
Exactly. So who have you got Philly-wise?
So I went with Dallas Goedert at $4.20. Again, same reasoning of Kansas City going to knuckle down on AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Who's the next guy that's going to step up in that receiving game? And to me, it's Dallas Goedert, and he's always that red zone target as well. So $4.20, I think that's really good value there for him. So outside of that, it's you're going with the most obvious ones, and I try not to do that sort of thing because people don't need to be told that. They're going to look at him and go, AJ Brown, touchdown, simple. So
it's funny because I had the same thought process as you. Let's pick someone else, and I actually had Dallas Goedert written down as well. But my second choice after that, similar sort of vein of thinking, is probably Devonta Smith. He's $3.45 for a touchdown. So not trying to pick the most obvious of people with both their bets, but AJ Brown's $2.85, but he'll probably have Trent McDuffie shadowing him for a fair chunk. Trent McDuffie is AJ Brown has gone up against the best corners in the league, and he's been successful. But if you are looking for someone else other than an AJ Brown or a Saquon, whatever, he's probably my pick since you took Dallas Goedert.
And I think it
Um,
shows that we're not really expecting Jalen Hurts to have a massive passing game in the sense that I don't think he's going to throw even two passing touchdowns. I'd be surprised just with how they run their offense and what they have there with Saquon Barkley as well, and with Jalen Hurts with his legs as well. So, yeah, picking a receiver for the touchdowns difficult, but you're not going to sort of putting money on Saquon Barkley. You're going to have to outlay a fair bit of money to get anything back worthwhile. So,
yeah.
The other one I
And
had was probably Jalen Hurts, 2+ touchdowns.
I had that
I think,
exact same thing written down here.
yeah, I think we've seen Saquon get down inside the 5 so many times. I was listening to something, I heard it the other day. I think it was 12 times Saquon Barkley got tackled at the 1 yard line or 2 yard line this year. And out of that, I think he only had 3 touchdowns himself after that. Jalen Hurts took 7 of them or something. And then there was another couple to whoever else. But could you imagine if he didn't get tackled there? He'd have like 20+ touchdowns on the year.
So I had two written down for the Eagles for long shots, and they were both Jalen Hurts. I had the 2 touchdowns was paying $4.90. But the actual one that I was thinking of chucking a few dollars on is Jalen Hurts 3 touchdowns. Now his 3 touchdowns, I'm kicking myself I didn't bet it earlier in the week, because earlier in the week it was 37-1. It's now dropped to 19-1, so it's gone down by half. And I think it's probably because when you look at the game that they played, the last game that they played, him and Saquon both had 3 touchdowns. Saquon's at $12 for 3 touchdowns. They both had 3, but if you also look at the last Super Bowl these two teams played, Jalen Hurts had 3 rushing touchdowns against them. So I'm thinking along the lines of you in the sense of, like you said, Saquon's been tackled at the 1 so much.
Yeah.
Anytime you get within that, it's just going to be a Jalen Hurts tush push.
And they're so automatic at it that how do you go with anything else kind of thing right on the goal line?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I will also more than likely, I am going to, because as Josh mentioned, nearly every year there's a defense that feels like who scores a touchdown. So I'm going to put $1 on, or a couple dollars actually, on both defenses to score. So Kansas City $7.75 and Philadelphia $7.25. So to me, they're ones, like I said, there's a lot of Super Bowls, it feels like, especially as of late, there's been a defensive touchdown. And like I said, we even look back to the last time these two teams played, and Jalen Hurts did fumble that ball that Nick Bolton picked up and ran back for a touchdown. So I'm not going to be shocked if there's a defense score in this game as well. Dan, give me a couple of your MVP bets. Who do you think could potentially win MVP in this game?
So it's going to come down to how the game's played, right? So we've said we're not going to expect a lot of points, but it might not be sort of because of a defensive standpoint of view, where they've just been dominant and shut down Jalen Hurts or shut down Patrick Mahomes, shut down Saquon Barkley. So it's a kind of game I'm not really sure we're going to see a defensive MVP this game, because like I said earlier, these two teams, they both hold the ball for massive long drives. And yes, it gives the defensive player a lot of chances to make plays, but at the end of the day, I still think we're going to see points. It's not going to be that sort of 13-10 type of game. So I think I'm going to take any defensive MVP out of it, unfortunately. If I was to pick someone, I would say Jalen Carter, because I think he can have the biggest impact for that Philly defense. Same with Chris Jones from the Chiefs as well. But I'm not confident enough to think that they'll be the MVP. So I think it is going to be Saquon Barkley, lock it in as your MVP. I think he is just set to go absolutely massive this game. And that offensive line for the Chiefs, they're healthy now. Cam Jurgens is going to be fit for the game, which is a massive boost. And I just think Saquon Barkley, with what he's been through, at the Giants. He's wanted this sort of game his whole career. I think he's going to absolutely blitz it. As good as the Chiefs are against the run this year, they haven't faced anyone like Saquon Barkley. So, yeah, I'm thinking at least 125 plus rushing yards, couple touchdowns, Saquon Barkley, MVP.
So I think it's going to be one of those things. If the Chiefs win, it's going to be Mahomes. If Philly wins, I actually think it's going to be Jalen Hurts, because I do think that he had that massive game against them in the last Super Bowl when they played. And if they win that game, Jalen Hurts is the MVP. He had 1 passing touchdown and 3 rushing touchdowns. I'm sort of thinking along those same sort of lines for Jalen Hurts in this one. Like, I'm expecting a couple touchdowns. It wouldn't shock me to see him with 3 rushing touchdowns. And like you said, with Saquon over 125, his rushing over under for this is 109.5. So they're expecting a big game too. Yeah. But the only reason I'm not going Saquon is because of Spags. Now, Steve Spagnuolo can craft that a pretty awesome defense, and I feel like their whole thought process is going to be like, let's stop Saquon at all costs, and let's make Jalen Hurts beat us by throwing the ball. So if he gets 3 passing touchdowns because he hits AJ Brown, Devonta, Dallas Goedert, and then he comes back and gets a rushing or 2 rushing touchdowns, because as much as we're saying like we don't think this is going to be a very high scoring game, the last Super Bowl between these two teams was 38-35. So, and obviously defenses have changed and players have changed and all that sort of stuff, but it wouldn't shock me to have this be a super high scoring game. So if it was super high scoring, I think Philly win. Jalen Hurts gets the nod for me. But I did look at a couple real outsiders for MVP that I like the looks of, just because of, we saw in that, it was a Seattle Super Bowl that they won, and Malcolm Smith was the MVP.
Yeah,
do you remember that? Because like Russell didn't do too much, and he had Malcolm Smith had that interception or whatever. It wouldn't shock me if there's something like that happen, because really, if you go back and you watch that previous Super Bowl between these two teams, it was a real toss-up between Patrick Mahomes and Nick Bolton, who should have won the MVP in that game, because Nick Bolton was everywhere in that game and had that fumble return for a touchdown. So I've got a couple outsiders here who you could potentially look at if you wanted to sprinkle something on a roughie, as we call them. So Chris Jones is paying $61. As you said,
he's
Chris
61?
Jones, he's $61 for MVP.
I haven't even looked at the odds for them, but that's okay. 61. Gee, okay.
So the top ones here. So you go, Mahomes is $2.25, Saquon's $3.50, Jalen Hurts is $4.33. Then it's Travis Kelce is $13, Xavier Worthy is $26, AJ Brown is $31, and then next on that list is Chris Jones, Devonta Smith, Kareem Hunt, and Marquise Brown, all $61 for MVP. So I had Chris Jones there. Jalen Carter, as I mentioned, he's $91 for MVP. And like you said, if he just wrecks that game, keeps Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco to a combined 25 yards rushing and sacks Mahomes 2 or 3 times, like Jalen Carter at $91, that'd be a solid bet there. Last couple that I've got, Zach Bourne for the Eagles.
Oh, yeah.
Linebacker. He's the guy to me that could be that like roughie who wins because just how he's utilized. Like he all pro this year after barely playing
similar
for the Saints.
Similar to the Nick Bolton could have been year.
Yeah.
Different kind of player, but in that sense where he's always around the ball making plays. So, yeah, I like that one. That's a good one.
If if I gave you Jalen Carter's $91, what do you think Zach Bourne's at?
127.
Oh, he's 126.
Oh, I was trying to work out what it was at that sort of price point that they normally do.
Yeah. So he's there. I thought if it is one of those games where maybe Patrick Mahomes plays one of his worst ones and Quinyon Mitchell goes off, like Quinyon Mitchell's 201 to 1. So Quinyon's a big outsider there. My last look was Nick Bolton because of the last time that they played. Now, what do you think Nick Bolton's at?
See,
Zach Bourne was 126 to 1.
Well, Nick Bolton's done it before, so to me, he should be about 71.
Okay. You would be very upset if you took your odds for what Nick Bolton is for. So Nick Bolton currently has the same odds as Trent McDuffie, Oren Burks, Josh Sweat, and CJ Gardner-Johnson. And they're all 326 to 1.
What on earth? That makes no sense to me.
Do you know what also doesn't make... Like, I understand this, but it doesn't make sense as well. So, George Karloftis, 151 to 1. Juju and Nolan Smith are both 176 to 1. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, 201 to 1. This is the part that starts to get a bit weird for me, even more so. DeAndre Hopkins, 226 to 1. Harrison Butker, 226 to 1.
What do we do?
Isaiah Pacheco is 276 to 1. So Isaiah Pacheco has worse odds than what Harrison Butker does. And Jake Elliott is also 276 to 1. It's just, yeah.
Interesting.
The thing is, I know that they've got to add all these players who potentially could, go, MVP. But this is the part that I don't get, right? So Nick Bolton was 326 to 1. They've got offensive linemen here for odds. So I could bet, it'd be the worst bet in the world, but you could bet Cam Jurgens at 351 to 1 to win the MVP. When is a center going to win the MVP?
I've got a new agenda going now. We need to get Jordan Mailata a Super Bowl MVP. Let's go. The NFL has just been announced coming to Australia. Jordan Mailata in the Super Bowl is going to be a Super Bowl MVP winner.
So these guys all have the exact same odds at 351 to 1. And I'm not going to read everyone because it's every other player that I haven't pretty much listed. But you've got Grant Calcaterra, Jahan Dotson, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Joe Tooney, Johnny Wilson, Jordan Davis is 351 to 1. Jordan Mailata is 351 to 1. Imagine this. Super Bowl MVP, Philadelphia Eagles running back, Kari Blasingame at 351 to 1.
So they're just putting their name there just so they don't feel left out.
What would Matt Ariza have to do at 351 to 1 odds to win? What would the punter for the Kansas City Chiefs have to do to win the Super Bowl?
Average 50 plus net yards, have a passing touchdown, have a receiving touchdown, and have a rushing touchdown. And
then put him on defense, and he gets a and then put him on defense, he gets a pick six, and then when they hold for the extra point, he flips it to Harrison Butker for the 2-point conversion.
And they might give him a nomination for it.
Yeah, it'll still go to Saquon, or it'll go to Pat Mahomes.
So as a betting agency, them putting those odds up just for every single person. So we have the Melbourne Cup here. And I'd imagine just about every person that bets on horse racing, the Melbourne Cup, just chucks $1, $2 on the absolute outsider. The worst odds you can get. They'll just chuck $1 on, $2. Get like $100 back for it. I wonder on something as big as the Super Bowl, how much actual cash intake they take for just $1 bets on the most random MVP
Mm.
for games like this.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, it'll.
that's the
Yeah,
only
it's
reason they'd put up odds for those players. Come on.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, when is an offensive lineman ever going to win an MVP? Like, it just doesn't make. The only way it works is if every single offensive lineman on the Philadelphia Eagles gets injured, except for Jordan Mailata, who's got to snap the ball, play center, left guard, left tackle, right tackle, all on the same play,
I mean,
and somehow stops Jalen Hurts from getting sacked once, as he's playing all 5 positions and taking on everyone, and then they might go, very good, but Jalen still gets the MVP because he threw 4 touchdowns. Like, it's just going to be...
He's 6'8", 360 odd pounds. I mean, he's big enough to almost cover all 5 there.
Yeah, but I don't think quite in that aspect to win.
It's just foolish having those players at those odds. Like, no point.
Nah, there's no point at all. Any other bets that you saw that you liked, whether they were novelty ones or just anything that you saw that you liked before we give our final picks for the game?
I didn't go too deep into it for those novelty ones. I think, it's just one of these games where I think we're going to get what we expect kind of thing. I don't think anything too outlandish will happen. Anything too crazy or unexpected will happen. So, I didn't look too far into those at all. So I have nothing for you.
That's all right. I've got a couple here that you might like. They're not too outlandish ones. So, player to have the longest reception of the game, Xavier Worthy is paying $6. And Marquise Brown is paying $7.50.
Yep.
So I don't mind them as longest reception of the game. Also, this actually isn't the worst bet either. Like, Saquon Barkley's $34. What would happen if Saquon gets one of those 1-yard dump offs that he then makes 5 people miss and runs at 45 yards for a touchdown? Like, $34 is pretty decent. $34 to...
Let me just mark that down.
Yeah, I might add that to the list. Saquon Barkley, let's put him now. And then I was thinking, Xavier Worthy at $6.
Yeah.
Player to have the longest rush of the game. It's almost unbackable, Saquon Barkley at $1.47. But I was actually thinking, what about Jalen Hurts?
Yeah,
Jalen Hurts is Jalen's $6.50.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you just chuck $1 or $2 on that?
So, Saquon, obviously, massive chance every game that he's going for a 60-plus yard run. But in a Super Bowl against this team, it's going to be hard to see him just bust off that monster run. Jalen Hurts has the ability to go out and, with all the focus on Saquon Barkley, pull it back in, run around the outside and pick up 45, 50 yards. We've seen him do it.
Yeah.
So, definitely a chance for him to do that.
I've got a couple others here that you're going to like too. So, player to receive. So, this is for the market for those guys that barely get in and play, but, they're in there, or they're in there for a lot of plays, but they don't usually have the ball thrown their way. So, it's player to record 1+ receiving yard in the game. So, they got Grant Calcaterra at $2.37.
Yeah.
He gets an odd pass here or there. Justin Watson at $3.12. Johnny Wilson at $5.20. And then the other two that I don't mind, Peyton Hendershot at $9.50 and Paris Campbell at $8. They're guys that, like, I could see a pass going their way. Because all it is they have to get 1 yard.
Yeah.
And that's it.
You'd be so annoyed if they got like a little screen pass or something and end up going backwards and lose a yard. You're like, come on, man, just fall forward at least.
So then, player to record 1 rushing yard. Samaje Perine is $2.32 to get 1 rushing yard. Dallas Goedert, $3.26. Carson Steele, $5.20. Travis Kelce, $6. And Marquise Brown at $10. So there
Only the
are a
ground
couple of
one at
those.
$10.
Yeah.
I know they use Worthy on the sweeps a lot, but gee, yeah, don't mind that $10.
Let me see. There's a couple other ones here. If you don't think there will be a successful fourth down conversion in this game whatsoever, and you say no, that's paying $8.50.
Jeez, I thought they would have
But
been higher.
These two teams are two of the teams that go for it most out of anyone. So,
Yeah.
it would be, yeah. Defensive or a special teams touchdown, yes, is paying $4.25. But at those odds, I'd rather just go bet the defense of both teams and whoever the punt and kick returners are. I'd rather just go and bet them individually because the odds are far better than $4.25.
Yeah.
A couple defensive ones here you'll like. Player to record a sack and cause a fumble on the same play. So, sack the quarterback and the ball comes flying out. The shortest odds for all of the defenders is actually Nolan Smith. Now, Nolan Smith, to record a sack and cause a fumble, Nolan Smith is paying $9.50.
Yeah, right.
Carl Loftus, Josh Sweat, Mike Dan are all $10. Charles Omenahu's 11, Chris Jones and Jalen Carter and Milton Williams are all $13.
Interesting one.
And then here, player to record the sack, cause the fumble, and recover the ball all on the same time. All those players are all $81 to do it. So, do you reckon there'll be a safety in this game?
No.
Well, safety's paying $12 if you wanted to put $1 or $2 on there being a safety a safety in this game.
Yeah, that's not bad. I just think these two teams they're not going to be sort of down on their 1 yard line all that often. I don't think this game.
No.
So yeah, I think I'll be avoiding the safety one, but decent odds if you want to have a crack.
Let's see. The kicking and punting, I'm not really keen on. Any player to score 3 or more touchdowns is $7.75 for yes. But once again, I'd be more looking at betting that player individually, unless it's a Saquon, because Saquon was. But even then, Saquon's $12 for.
I was going to say he was
touchdowns.
Still far above that. So,
any player to record an octopus in this game, so they've got to score the touchdown and then get the 2-point conversion on the same drive. So that's $9.50 if there's someone who scores an octopus. If you want to put anything on there. Let's see. There's one. What do you reckon interceptions wise? Over or under 1.5 for combined receptions?
Oh.
So each quarterback would have to throw 1 interception, or one of them would have to throw 2.
Gee, that's interesting, isn't it? I think I have to go under because Jalen Hurts just hasn't been turning it over at all. And obviously we know Mahomes doesn't in these big moments either. So, yeah, I wouldn't be confident going over for that one.
So under, the juice is on the under. So it's $1.56 for under, and over is $2.33. It was just surprising to see that number and you go, oh, actually, that's...
I mean, it's
not
worth the crack because both these defenses are unreal, but yeah, I wouldn't be confident. If it was interceptions and fumbles combined, the number for that, I think that would be more interesting.
So this is one on if you actually go onto a sports bet, there's a market that's called script markets. So it's the NFL script for how they want this to go. But I actually don't mind this first one. Kansas City Chiefs to trail in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter and win the game. Yes is paying $7.50. So they'd have to be trailing in the last 2 minutes
or the last 2 minutes.
Win the game.
$7.50.
So, yeah. So can you imagine if it is that type of game that we saw, like what Josh was talking about, 28-27, what happens if it gets to the last minute? Mahomes gets the ball. Yeah. He's got to drive it for a field goal, and they're down 25-27, and they kick the game-winning field goal.
Yeah, I'm expecting a close game as well. So that's...
And so then you'll like this one too, if in that scenario. So this would be one that you'd bet both of these together then. Either team to kick a game-winning walk-off field goal at the end of regulation. So winning margin must be 3 points or less. Yes is paying $10 for a walk-off field goal for either team. So it's not just the Chiefs. It could just be like what it was last Super Bowl, where the score was tied, and then there was a field goal kicked as time expired. If that happens, $10.
So I'm just writing these down. So a last-minute field goal to win the game, $10.
Yep.
Load me up.
Yep. Will there be a score on the last play of the game? Yes is paying $9.50.
Yeah, it ties in
same
with
scenario.
The one we just had, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're getting the juicy parts of it.
Yeah. Will both teams have the lead in the fourth quarter? Yes is paying $3.45 that both teams have the lead at one stage in the fourth quarter. So it could be Philly has the lead going into the fourth, and then the first play of it, Kansas City get a touchdown and then never trail for the rest of it. But it doesn't matter because Philly would be in the lead. So $3.45 there.
That's solid.
Will both teams have the lead in the second half? Yes is paying $2.37.
Oh, yeah. Give me that one. I'll load up on
that. Will any quarter be scoreless? Yes is paying $4.65 for yes.
I looked at that one. So we talked earlier about how long these two teams hold the ball. And they have long drives. I can absolutely see one of the quarters being scoreless.
Yeah. And so a couple others that I don't mind here. A score in the final 2 minutes of the first half. No is paying $4.20. So no score in the last 2 minutes of the first half.
Really? Okay.
Last play
so
of the game to be a
field goal.
Yeah, it just says no. So no score, no score at all.
Okay. Interesting one.
Last play of the game to be a quarterback kneel. No is paying $2.26. Which ties in with our other one of a walk-off field goal.
Yeah.
And then the last one here, which I don't mind, the team that scores last wins the game. No is paying $2.66. Because I could also see one of those games if you think that one of these teams is going to win by 7 points or 5 points or whatever. Like, so say it gets to the last drive. There's a minute 30 left. Kansas City score, and they're down by 5 points with a minute 30 left. No timeouts left. They've got to do the onside kick. They do the onside kick. Philly runs the clock out, and Kansas City scored the last, but they didn't win the game. So they were just a couple of them there that I didn't mind.
And just for our listeners, if you've sat there and you're still with us after the last 10 minutes, understand that this is the type of rabbit hole that Brad loves going down. And in the very near future, there is going to be a fully fledged Brad Bolt betting show on the Optimus Fantasy website.
100%. Because it's one of those things that you start... If you start looking at some of these, though, like especially with these, you start looking at some of those bets, and some of them you're like, I could see these happening. Like we said, the the last minute field goal, the last second field goal, winning, like the scoring, that was $10 for yes. If you think that there's a
imagine if
walk-off
you were
field
betting
goal.
on that with the Patriots dynasty,
Mm.
you would have been laughing.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But like I said, so you could go Kansas City to trail in the last 2 minutes, but win the game is $7.50, and then either team to kick a winning walk-off field goal at $10, and then will there be a score on the last play of the game at $9.50? They all could go hand in hand together to win. Like, you could see that. Like, Kansas City down by 2. It's Kansas City down by 2. They get there and they run the play down. 3 seconds left on the clock. They call the timeout. Harrison Butker comes out for the 33-yard field goal, kicks the field goal, and bam, 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 all 3 of those hit. Like, I could see it.
Yeah.
But yes, it is a
there's some
wormhole that
interesting
I
ones in
sometimes go down.
Very interesting ones.
Very interesting. So, yes, thanks for the last 10 minutes of everyone heard that rambling of an insane person. That's what happens when you end up with a sinus infection and you can't sleep. You end up spending way too much time looking at Super Bowl prop bets when you really should probably be doing something else. So,
Come on, what else are you going to be doing when you can't sleep?
Exactly. Dan, have you got anything that you would like to? Oh, we've got to give our picks.
I was about to say, yeah, let's go with that.
So we'll give our picks and then we'll obviously head out. I am going to go. Look, as much as I want to say the Chiefs, I just feel like that this Philly team has just that little bit too much this game. So I am going to go Philly in this one.
Yeah, no matter what way I go with this, and I've been fairly set from the start when we've had these two teams locked in. I haven't wavered from it, but I've done it with no confidence at all, and it would be the same no matter who I picked. I see this genuinely as a 50-50 toss-up where you cannot split them. Yeah. I just think the addition of Saquon Barkley to this Eagles team behind that offensive line, and that offensive line is still the best in the league. You have Jalen Hurts. He's not playing at that superstar level, but he's playing at a level where he's not making mistakes. He's not turning the ball over. He's making the big plays when he's needed to in the passing game, and obviously with his legs as well to pick up those first downs. You look at the additions since the last Super Bowl between these two teams. Like I said, Jalen Carter, I'm expecting to just have a massive game. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Nolan Smith, they've added these players since that time. They are the best team out of the two. And Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce are the difference makers for the Chiefs. I just think we haven't seen a three-peat in the Super Bowl era before, and for good reason. The Patriots teams were as dominant and as good as any team in the Super Bowl era, and they didn't do it. I just think it's so hard back to back to back, and you're against a team that hasn't just backdoored their way in kind of thing. They've played really well during these playoffs. I just think, for me, it's Philly 28-24. But again, I can give you all those reasons why I think Philly win, but then I turn around and say I absolutely can expect the Chiefs to win because they're the Chiefs. That's what it comes down to.
Well, this is the thing.
You're picking the Chiefs because they're the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's that thing where you can look at, everything about this game and to why Philly should win. But at the end of the day, Kansas City still has Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And it's honestly, I'm currently going with the Eagles. But if I was actually to, you were to do a poll with how confident, how I'm picking these teams, it's honestly, it's 51% Philadelphia, 49% Kansas City. So I can honestly say this might be one of the hardest Super Bowls to try and pick for a while. Like last year, I was pretty confident in Kansas City. The first time these two teams played, I was confident in Kansas City. Like, it's just sort of felt like the other years, no matter even if the Chiefs were in it or, Rams, Bengals, whatever, you sort of, from the get-go, you had I like this team and I was pretty confident in them. Like with the other Super Bowls, I was pretty confident in who I picked. Now, I had Cincinnati in that Super Bowl against the Rams, but it was one of those things that from day dot, I was like, I'm on Cincinnati. Like nothing changed my mind the entire time. I thought LA was going to put up a good fight, but I thought that obviously Cincinnati would win, which it didn't. So, but this is the one where this has probably been one of the hardest ones where I have been going back and forth for so long over these teams. And I swear I'm probably going to change my mind another 10, 15 times, probably before the end of this show. And we're almost done with this show. So, like, it's just, these are two incredible teams. If you could guarantee this caliber of team every year for the Super Bowl, you're going to have the happiest fans in the world just to watch the two best teams, because these guys have been the two best teams for the season. And, it's all you can ask for is, as a neutral, if you don't have your favorite team in here, all you can be asking for is two really good teams playing. And that's what we're getting with this.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts, Dan?
I'm always excited for the Super Bowl, obviously, but this game especially, just because of the amount of storylines it has and the potential of that history being made, history being stopped. Just, bring on Monday. I can't wait.
Well, that'll do us for this one. We'll have some more shows coming soon where we're going to dive into the draft and our draft prospects. So giving you a hint, if you are wanting to join along in the discussion, our very first show is going to be interior defensive linemen. So if you would like to join along with us and you have your thoughts on the interior defensive linemen, get ready for our top 10 show that we will be having soon. So you can find Dan on Twitter at beard_82. You can find me at BradBolt1. You can find us on Blue Sky as well. I'm probably more on Blue Sky now than I was on Twitter, so feel free to come and join in the conversation over there. You can follow Optimus Fantasy or us on the Optimus NFL show, all on Spotify, YouTube, anywhere that you get your podcasts. Dan, any last words or thoughts before we jump out of here?
We are back with a vengeance, mate. We are, like you said, some massive shows coming up. So we're hoping to pump out at least one a week. We look at two a week on the odd occasion when we can as well. So, yeah, plenty of content going to be coming out from both of us now. So back in the frame, back excited to be doing this as well. So life has kind of settled down as much as it possibly can for the both of us, which is saying a lot because it doesn't tend to be that way a lot. So, yeah, let's get back to that consistency of putting out really good content, hopefully, and everyone come along for the ride and enjoy it.
And like we said, when we start doing our top 10s, you're going to start seeing some graphics and some little shorts about guys where we've actually gone and got some all 22 footage that we've been able to find for a bunch of these guys as well. So we're diving into these guys a lot better than what we've ever been able to do with some of these. I like to think we had some pretty decent hits last year in our rankings when we were doing them back on the old NFL Lab Network stuff. So, like I said, you'll see a lot of this coming out from us. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your inputs. So, on behalf of Dan, my co-host, we also want to thank again Josh Jenkins for coming on. That was awesome to have him jumping on with us to have a chat. So, on behalf of Dan, the rest of the Optimus team, thank you for listening to the Optimus NFL show, your ultimate football destination, transforming the way you watch the game. Bye for now.